Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this new podcast that we're calling the Miami Med Gym Podcast. I'm Jose Almeida. I'm a vascular surgeon here in Miami, and I'm joined she's actually my sister, Dr. Mary Lou Hunt, who's out in Texas, and we're going to be discussing a little bit about gut health. So welcome, everyone, and we hope you find this valuable. So just kind of to introduce this, I opened a gym 6 years ago and started a YouTube channel. The idea being, how can a surgeon contribute to the education of the gym members? And I did a few of these and kind of faded off. So this time I'm going to get back on here and stay on because I do think it's valuable information. The podcast space has blown up. I mean, I can't believe how many great people, PhDs, doctors, all kinds of experts from all walks of life are doing these things, and the quality of the information of these things. So that's what we're trying to do here. The focus here is going to be nutrition and exercise, how it affects health. That's the overall theme. I think you see on the email that I'm actually a competitive bodybuilder also. So we'll kind of mix that in. I've been doing that for 20 years, which means I've done 17 bodybuilding shows, which means I've gone through the dieting process, or a bulk and cut that probably people have heard of, 17 times. So the whole nutrition thing and mood and feeling and the irritability, going through a diet and dropping the carbs and the protein, the macros, I've got a lot of experience with that. Today's more of an overview, but we'll be doing more deep dives into these things on again with the health, exercise, and nutrition theme and how it affects one's health. So let me have my sister Mary Lou introduce herself and her background, and then we'll make some more overarching introductory comments, and we'll keep moving forward. So Mary Lou.
Hi, I am a pharmacist, licensed pharmacist. I used to work in the hospital years back, and I was a clinical manager for a while, and then I was the director of the pharmacy department. So big job, watching sick people come into the facility, into the hospital. We give them medications, or physicians, check lab work, do procedures, and we help get patients better, and they would leave the hospital. And I was lucky enough to take a breather when our family was moved abroad. And at that point, I realized, I kept thinking back, we send these people home, but do we really help them on the wellness side? What do we do for them to, look back and say, why did these people get sick? And how can we truly make them better, and not just, put them on medications and that, sometimes are really band-aids to the problems. So I dove into integrative nutrition and got certified as a health coach, moved into gut health, which is something that I truly love. I think the digestive system is fascinating. I think it has to be truly healthy. And with a healthy digestive system, then we can absorb our nutrients and truly live a healthier life, and hopefully prevent some chronic diseases, which we're just seeing on the rise.
Yeah, so to follow that, our healthcare system in the United States is super complicated, as everyone knows. And so I'm going to be 59 in a couple of months here. Mary Lou's a year younger, so we're pushing 60. So we're no spring chickens. We've been around the game in the space for a long time. We've seen the changes that have occurred with healthcare from the early days to now, where it's very corporatized, it's very profit driven. There's a lot of issues, and we're not going to get on the soapbox today, but in future episodes we probably will. But we've got, as people refer to now, the mastermind group. So I've got my peers, my buddies, surgeons and docs, and we're all kind of moving towards this wellness type of space, real holistic space, realizing that Yeah, we're trained to treat disease, and that's what we do. So we do surgery, we just prescribe medication, but we don't get to the root cause of things. And there's way more than just the disease, as we know. So our father, Mary Lou, and I was a psychiatrist, and he would always say there's four pieces to human being: the mental, physical, the spiritual, and the emotional. And as one gets older, we really start appreciating these things. So that's part of the balance that will be, that'll be an overarching theme of the podcast as we move forward and dive into different issues. But my doctor buddies and myself are all realizing that we need to add this piece to our practice, learning about nutrition and exercise because of what's going on. So as we get into this, let's just get on the theme of the standard American diet and obesity. We know it's an epidemic. People are not eating well. There's a lot of obesity, and with obesity comes insulin resistance, what is called metabolic syndrome, inflammation. So if you really look at things, it's the inflammation in the body that's causing chronic diseases. And the top ones would be cardiac and vascular, as far as mortalities, or cardiac and vascular lead, followed by cancer, and now neurodegenerative diseases. They're all related to inflammation. Everything is related to inflammation. And as we're learning, the gut and the microbiome are a major player in this. So this gets really interesting, because just from a 50-foot view, a human being, we have about 37 trillion cells that we call ours. These all have to function independently. The mitochondria within the cells are the energy, was called the powerhouse of the cells that make the energy, was called ATP. And that's the energy that we need to move forward. When we eat food, that's going to go into our mouth, down our digestive tract, get broken down, and then reassembled. And that's what we call the mass of a human being. What's interesting is that there's probably another 37 trillion microbes or bacteria that we coexist with. So we're a big bug, basically. There are older numbers I've seen that maybe it's 100 trillion microbes. And I use that term for bacteria, fungi, viruses, all kinds of things that coexist with us. But I think the more recent numbers, it's about even 37 trillion cells that we have, and 37 trillion microbes that we coexist with. These are on the skin, on the head, down to the toes, and especially in the gut. So this gut, let's call it gut-centric ideas that are going around, everything being related to the gut and inflammation, has led to these two terms. One is called the microbiome, and the other is a microbiota. Microbiome meaning the collective genetic information of these microbes, and the microbiota are the actual species of the microbes. So we're going to use this interchangeably, or just call it microbiome, not to get too picky. But what we're seeing now is that the gut microbiome is a real critical intermediary between a diet, the metabolic, the immune systems, and this can just in itself contribute to obesity. And we've seen things, there's studies after study, this is really becoming well studied in a huge space, developing rapidly. And Ray Lou's going to get into this a little more. But the gut microbiome is involved. There's now the gut-brain axis people refer to. And then I just want to throw this in there before I forget. There's things that can change the microbiome, your nutrition, even mood. But of all things, and I'm going to say this 1,000 times in the next couple of years doing this podcast, of all the supplements, of all the things you can do, exercise trumps everything. The best thing you can do for your health is exercise above anything. Start with small, if it's just a 15-minute walk, and start building into resistance training, develop your skeletal muscle mass. very important in the process of disposing glucose after you eat. We'll do more on this later, but exercise. So we're going to get into the gut now and dive a little deeper because we've got Mary Lou here. Mary Lou, why don't you just kind of take it from there and tell us about what a food intolerance looks like versus perhaps a food allergy. If you've got symptoms of bloating, diarrhea, what are the things you should be focusing on to change this? What kind of foods? And then maybe, we'll get into this a little bit because it's such a taboo topic. People don't like to say it, but there's poop, bowel movements. They really tell a lot of the story of what's going on inside. So let's just start a little bit with that, and we'll kind of go back and forth, and maybe I'll talk a little bit more about the macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fats, and what that means as we digest them. But let's learn a little bit more about why so many food intolerances and what that really means. The symptoms. How do you listen to your symptoms?
Okay, sure. I think that when we're talking about food sensitivities, I think they present differently than a true food allergy. It's almost like a medication sensitivity versus a true allergy. So the symptoms, if they are gas and bloating and some of the more minor symptoms, then I believe those are considered more sensitivities. Now, if you start having more of like an anaphylactic reaction, you're truly, having a massive reaction to a food you eat. And we see that often with peanut allergies or seafood allergies. People start developing and they really have nasty reactions. And in those cases, we really need to pull those foods away because they're having more of an allergic reaction than just a sensitivity. So if you're, starting out with gas, with bloating, with diarrhea or constipation, then I think those are food intolerances and things that we really need to pay attention to. So, if you had if you just look in your car, if you're sitting in your car, we get these lights, these little sensors, and they say, it's time to change your oil. It's time to do maintenance on your system. And what's the first thing we do? We go to the car dealership and we change the oil or change the filters or do all these different things. But with ourselves, we have it more of a tendency to just say, oh, it'll go away. Maybe some people do take a deep dive and say, wow, maybe I do need to start paying attention to some of these different foods. I think it's a great idea to journal, especially in the beginning, if you really want to try to help yourself, is to kind of keep track when you eat and you have a reaction, whether it's gas or bloating or diarrhea, write it down and write down what foods you ate so you can for yourself, you can start identifying. Or if we are working with you, then that's one of the things that we really do is we take a deep dive into what you're eating, how you feel after you eat. Sometimes it's not just right after you eat, because sometimes you eat and you feel fine, but 2 hours later you start to develop gas and you look and you're really bloated, and that can potentially be a different type of a problem. So I do think it's really important to pay attention to the foods you're eating and then the consequences, or the good things. Because so for example, with bodybuilding or with exercise, so we want people exercising more. I can't agree more with that. But you need energy to exercise properly. And if you're an athlete and or an elite athlete, you really need food to work with for you. You need the proper energy to, whatever sport you're doing, whether it's bodybuilding, and you're, in your tournament, you need to perform. You need to be ready. You need to have the energy to do it. If you're, a swimmer, you need to be able to bounce off those blocks really fast and get in that pool, and you need to have enough energy to make it to the finish line. So it's not always, even about what you're eating. Sometimes it's important to know when to eat. And so I think there is a lot of confusion with food. Nutrition, I believe, is a very funny science. We always say we are what we eat. I really think we are what we digest or what we absorb. So it's interesting because there's so many foods out there, and people really don't know what to eat. And unfortunately, I don't think there's one diet. And I think there's a lot of fad diets that are out there, and people just, bounce
Yeah.
on and off of different diets. And I think at times they can't, really sustain a good diet for a long period of time because they're just constantly switching instead of really identifying what foods are good for my body.
So we call that yo-yo dieting, very common. A lot of it, we call it the standard American diet. So all the fast food that's around us, all the processed food that's around us, we need to be eating more fiber. So just, on a personal note, so, I used to do big surgery, 20 years ago, and part of the reason that I changed my practice to get out of the hospital and the emergency room and big operations and the stress of that, and move to a practice where I have 2 operating rooms here in my office. I can do smaller surgeries, I can eat well, and I can work out. That was a big change for me when I realized that I was spiraling down and my health was going down. So you get out of a 8-hour case and get to the surgeon's lounge and eat a couple of bagels and coffee and whatever the hell's sitting there, and you just move on. And little by little, it just starts, piling up, and the irritability and everything else. So about 20 years ago, I found a trainer, and she's the one. 20 years later, we've opened a gym together. Her name's Yexeni. But she's one that started teaching me how to eat. And this was more to prep for bodybuilding, which was a thing that I liked growing up. So, I played varsity sports, and Mary Lou actually is in the Palm Beach County Hall of Fame, where we grew up in West Palm Beach, about an hour north of Miami. She played 3 sports in high school, softball, volleyball, and basketball, and basically took all 3 sports and those teams to state championships and won them all. So she's was a star athlete in her day and knows a little bit about this also. But what I learned the first 2 years of prepping for bodybuilding shows, when I would get into my diet, which is now the classic chicken breast, white rice, broccoli diet. So the macros, getting enough protein, getting enough carbs, and fats. We didn't really know about fats back then, 20 years ago, the importance of fat and difference between unsaturated, saturated fats, and the omegas. We'll go into that a little deeper, but just so protein, carbohydrate, fat, those are the 3 macros. Proteins get broken down into amino acids. Amino acids get reassembled into proteins in your body. That's used for function, for structure, like bones. Carbohydrates, you eat them, they get broken down in the gut, turned into simple sugars or glucose. That's an energy source. That pretty much goes to the mitochondria, gets broken down and formed into ATP through oxidative phosphorylation. And fats, if not burned, they get stored as fat. And as one gets fatter, the actual fat cells grow, not so much divide, they grow, and they outgrow their blood supply and become ischemic and inflammatory. So fat becomes inflammatory. Obesity is an inflammatory disease. And the worst obesity is what we call visceral fat around the organs. So back to the story of getting prep for tournaments. It took me about 2 years to wean off a sugar craving and the grease craving. And the sugar craving has been shown in studies as probably as addictive as cocaine, as or more addictive than cocaine. And that's what's all around us with fast food, processed food. So how does one get out of this and start developing healthy habits? The only diet that works is the one that you will adhere to. So as Mary Lou said, there's fad diets, keto, vegan, or this, or carnivore. How do you navigate that scene with somebody? They come to you. I don't feel well. I'm gassy. How do you start some practical advice to a patient?
Well, one of the things that I'm going to use props because we're in different areas, but I like to use a bunch of teaching tools. And one teaching tool is this one because I don't believe that people truly understand how important the digestive system is and how it works. Because for me, I think that if your digestive system isn't working, then what you just commented on, so the proteins and the carbs and the fats that break down for all our energy and the nutrients that we need in our bodies to thrive and to perform when we're, in athletic events. If the digestive system, it's basically, I call it the alimentary canal, but it's 30 feet long. So, it starts up here in the mouth and it ends down here in the anus. But people don't understand that there's a lot of accessory organs in here that are helping everything work. And if you don't take care of this system, then and it becomes inflamed, like you said. So, if you're obese, or if you're just not eating right, I mean, sometimes you can be skinny on the outside, but fat on the inside because you're just not eating good, healthy foods. So I think that what I like to do is teach how these different systems work and why they're so important in nutrient absorption so that you can feel your best. And kind of going back to the two of us, I mean, sure, we're in our 50s, but I think we're 50 young. We both had situations. I had digestive issues as a kid. I think that's why I love this system. What I realize is that we don't have to live, with diarrhea and chronically constipated, and we can actually fix our systems. I was the same when I was in the hospital. I was so busy with my job and having kids, and I was getting to a point where I was about to develop an autoimmune disease myself. And I said to myself, wait a second, let's just slow down here and, fix my own system, which I did. And yeah, the two of us are free of disease. We eat very healthy. But food is, in my opinion, it should be fun. You should enjoy your meals. You shouldn't be scared to eat. And I feel like a lot of people come to me and their lab tests came back normal, and they did some different testing, let's just say at a gastroenterologist's office, and it all comes back normal. And they might just be told, hey, okay, we'll put you on some medications. A lot of medications are even over the counter now, so they're usually antacid style medications. So you can go over the counter and get them. Lots of people do. So they go out, they eat something that they know might not hit their system very well. So they take Tums or they take Pepcid or they take these antacids, not realizing that if you look at the system, your stomach here actually needs acid to work. It needs acid to break down all these foods that we're ingesting. So we need these to be properly broken down. I call the stomach our blender. It needs to be an acidic environment. It needs to work properly before it starts to allow food to move into our intestines. We need the food broken down well. So, even chewing food, I think that we're in a very fast-paced society. Everybody's in a rush. You hardly have time to sit down and eat your lunch. And I think people don't realize that you do, as soon as you think about food, your mouth actually starts releasing enzymes that's going to help break down the foods when you start chewing them. So if you can just sit down and calmly eat your meal, it'll actually help your digestive system a ton. And So I think that a lot of education on how the different systems work, and making sure that what goes in comes out. I'm not sure that my kids, we both are very lucky. We've both been married for 25 plus years and have amazing kids. But I use this tool when I'm speaking and teaching and educating people.
So
Hopefully
maybe
you can see it, but it's this Bristol stool chart. So you were talking about stool and poop. And I think you have to pay attention actually to what your poop looks like. You want your poop to be consistent. On this chart, it shows that you want it to be in the middle. You basically want it to, look like a little log, not having a better term. But if your poop is coming out with food in it, then you're not chewing well. You're not breaking things down the way you should. And that can cause problems in your digestive tract, which can lead to a leaky gut, which can lead to then just a multitude of problems. So yeah, there's a lot of education that goes into truly helping people understand what to eat, take your time with food, enjoy your food, find foods that are good for you, that work well in your system, because your body will thank you. And I think that's really important.
So Mary Lou, show that GI model again that you had,
Okay.
just to illustrate how the microbiome maybe has different colonies. So point to the liver and the gallbladder area there and the pancreas. So what's called the duodenum, or the first part of the small intestine, receives bile, and it receives digestive enzymes from the pancreas. So that environment is different than the stomach, which is different than the small intestine, which is different than the colon, which is different than the mouth. And what we're learning in studies is that these areas are populated by different colonies of the microbiome, and they have different properties or behaviors. So for example, the microbiome during so mostly they feed off of fiber. There's soluble and insoluble fiber, but during the digestive process, they also can give off chemicals that signal our body, like what's referred to as a gut-brain axis. So one thing I always say is you eat what you crave and you crave what you eat. And this has actually been shown. So like I stated at the beginning, before I started going through this whole dieting process to cut for shows, I had cravings for sugar and fat. And now I crave what I by the way, I eat the same 6 meals every day, the same food for the last 20 years. I'm the most boring person alive, my wife says, but that's what I crave. And from what I understand from my reading about the microbiome, this is because I've changed my microbiome, and the signaling process of the microbiome tells my brain to like lean meat, complex carbs, and vegetables. You can put a cake in front of me and I won't even see it. I have no desire to eat it. On a cheat day, I'll take a couple spoonfuls of something but I don't crave that stuff anymore. So, is that true that as you go down the GI tract, there are different populations of microbes, and these things talk to us, these bugs, so to speak, through chemical pathways or nervous pathways? Our gut is very neuro-rich. It has a lot of immune cells. Actually, 90% of serotonin is released by the gut, not so much in the brain. So these antidepressant drugs, SSRIs, or serotonin reuptake inhibitors, that are designed to increase serotonin, to increase mood. Having a healthy gut will affect your mood. So comment on that, how people can start, changing their microbiome for the better, and just the awareness that this is going on inside of them. And what, again, we've already alluded to processed food being a bad actor. It's what we call highly palatable food. It's not very satiating. You keep craving more. We have hormones, ghrelin and leptin release that are, help with satiety. There's a lot going on that we're not going to be able to cover today, but just the concept of what a healthy microbiome looks like, what an unhealthy microbiome looks like, what a leaky gut means. For example, I saw, we see a lot of these young women. So I see mostly venous patients, people with vein problems. So we see a lot of legs and a lot of leg pain. And just because you see a few spider veins on the legs doesn't mean that's the cause of their leg pain. And what we're seeing a lot is just fluid retention in general. And if you start really digging on the questions, they have GI issues and they're inflamed and they're retaining fluid. And that's a symptom because the fluid, gravity will take it down to the legs, it'll pull in the ankles, and it starts to hurt and weigh down. And the treatment is not a vein procedure. So again, just relating the idea that the gut is such a key player, and the reason we think the gut behaves this way is because of these bugs that we call the microbiome. So just tell us what a healthy microbiome may look like and what an unhealthy one, and things we can, practical tips to increase our digestion, improve our digestion.
Sure. I think, well, to start with, the microbiome, it is a beast. I believe it needs diversity. So, there's a lot of bugs that are in our guts, probably over 500 different types. So, you just drew out a lot of things. So thinking first of all about cravings. So how do we deconstruct cravings? And I think the idea that you're talking about, that you changed your eating habits, and once you changed your eating habits, now you're not craving other things. We do that a lot when we're educating people on diets, because I think, and actually diet isn't a word that I like to use. So just food choices. So when you're making your food choices, sometimes I think people think that, all food is created equal. So if you're just looking at calories, let's just say, well, I'm only eating a certain amount of calories, but if you're eating, so if you put an apple next to a bag of chips, they could be 100 calories each, let's just say, depending on the size. But I think you can realize the idea that an apple is going to have a lot more nutrients in it than a bag of chips. So, sometimes when we're helping people with their diets, we don't always have to take away food. But we try and do is introduce healthier choices. And so if we can get people eating, let's just say, more fruits and vegetable, well, they serve as prebiotics. They actually serve as the food for our, microbiome, all the bugs that are in mostly our colon. There's probably about 5 pounds of bacteria in our colon. And we need these bacteria to be good bacteria. And I think when your body is working well, when you don't have signs of or symptoms such as gas and bloating, and it can be other things. It could be skin issues. You're even talking about, neuromuscular diseases. There's a lot of ways that gut dysbiosis, we call it. So when your gut bacteria aren't in a healthy place, maybe there's more bad bacteria in your system than good bacteria, then we have to find ways to get your system back to healthier bacteria in the colon. So if you're a good colon, a nice colon that's working well, is going to, probably look, more like this. The inside, and I'll show you a return picture, but the inside should be nice and pink. There really shouldn't be disease spots in it. And there should be good quality, bugs in here that are working for us. Not only are the bugs working, but their genes. The bugs have genes. And this bacteria is actually one of the greatest contributors to the metabolic system, so to our energy. They create vitamins, they do create neurotransmitters, they create hormones. And when we are feeling that our guts are off, not feeling well, maybe you're, running to the bathroom too much, or maybe you're constipated and not going to the bathroom enough, then our gut on the inside, the colon can look something like this, which is, very diseased. And so we want to really focus on the digestive system, because we can keep this, very clean just by healthy eating styles. The gut is, I think, one of the most underrated organs. Nobody really thinks about, you don't really think about your digestive system. We all just assume it's going to work, it's going to do what it needs to do. But it's actually our brain's greatest advisor. And the gut-brain connection is real. The gut is actually considered a second brain. It actually has more neurons than the brain and the spinal cord put together. A lot of people don't realize this. And, there's hundreds of millions of neurons in the small intestine alone. So we really need to keep this system healthy, because then it keeps us, as free as possible of, chronic diseases. So, I think there's a lot in it. I think at times we're at a disadvantage, like you were talking about, because of this fast food generation and time, having enough time to cook, to get to the grocery stores, to get good, healthy food. When we start eating a healthier diet, I think that you will, it reduces those cravings. I'm like you, I really could care less about desserts. It's actually a joke in our house, because, I cook a lot, we have people over, and I forget dessert. And because I just don't really think about sugar. But interestingly, just a fun fact, the first sugar refinery was built in 1689. And within 10 years, so back then, people hardly ate, sugar, refined sugar that you can, buy at the store now. But within 10 years, people were consuming, 4 pounds a year. And in 2012, they showed that Americans are consuming more than 130 pounds of sugar a year. So I think, there is a time and a place for sugar, but sugar really is the enemy. It is very addictive, and it can cause you to develop bad cravings, which in turn are terrible for our bodies, our health. Just obesity, it causes inflammation, just really sets our systems off. So, I always go back to going back to props, but, these guys, they can truly be considered weapons of mass destruction, or they can be, probably the most powerful tool that we have to truly transform our health.
So, yeah, exactly. So I want to be respectful of our listeners' time. So let's set this one last little topic here, and we'll start wrapping up. There's my community, or the bodybuilding community, where so you calculate your calories. There's going to be maintenance calories. If you want to put on weight, you're going to go in a caloric surplus. If you want to lose weight, go in a caloric deficit. That's just a law of the universe. Then we prioritize protein. We think one should be getting about 1 gram per pound of protein per day. So a 200-pound person, about 200 grams of protein per day. Then, so that's like the bodybuilding community, people that want to, develop muscle and mass. And there's this other community, the plant-based community, that, there's a little bit of a rift between the two, because their view is high protein diets may, inhibit longevity, cause cancer. A lot of protein is bad. The plant-based community, of course, so plants are absolutely necessary. We eat tons of vegetables also, but that's where you get your fiber, and fiber can be soluble or insoluble and has different properties. So the healthy microbiome looks, what does that look like? It's a high fiber intake type of diet, about 40 grams a day, 35 to 40 grams a day, with a mix of soluble and insoluble, and they have different properties. So, I just want to emphasize that protein is important. Coming from my camp, one interesting thing too, there's this business called the leucine threshold. So one of the amino acids called leucine, you need about 30 grams of protein to get the 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine per meal that stimulates something called mTOR, which is necessary for protein synthesis. So as this podcast will progress, life is a yin and a yang. So we're constantly synthesizing protein, degrading protein, just like everything that we do. And it's about the balance. So my community would be, high on the protein side, keep the carbs on the low side, just enough for energy, and the fats you need for your cell membranes and your hormones. Whereas a vegan type community really would emphasize the fiber that's needed, all the micronutrients that come with plants, and of course, eating the rainbow of colors of plants. The micronutrients are the cofactors for these reactions that produce ATP, the vitamin Bs and the coenzyme Qs, these things you've heard of. So there's, like any, anything in life, there's always, a Democrat and Republican arguing on either side, and the plant-based community and the more, high protein community like myself may be at odds. But one thing is clear, and this is where we'll start to finish it up, is that you need fiber in the diet for healthy microbiome. So my understanding is that soluble fiber, will help the bugs will metabolize that, and short chain fatty acids and butyrate, which are necessary products, will be released. Whereas insoluble fiber is something that is used more to help us with transit, to bulk the stool in transit. So why don't you give us your view on fiber and what we should be doing to help keep a healthy microbiome?
Yes, what you said is very true. We do need a combination of the two of those. So I think in the American diet, we probably on average eat maybe 15 grams of fiber, which is just not enough. We probably do need to be eating, it'd be great if we could eat 40 grams of fiber, or even more in some countries, where people are living in their hundreds, even in their 120s in some of these blue zone areas. They eat up to 100 grams of fiber, believe it or not. But soluble fiber is what you're saying. So it's dissolves in water and it forms this gummy gel, which can slow down the passage of food from the stomach to the intestine. And, some examples of soluble fiber would be bananas or potatoes, maybe soft parts of apples and pears, oats and barley. So we do need combinations of these types of food, because fiber does serve as a prebiotic. So it does feed the microbiome, the good bugs in there. And the insoluble fiber, like you were saying, it doesn't dissolve in water. It really is referred to as roughage. So it actually holds on to water to help the stool become a little softer and bulkier, which allows for more regular bowel movements, which we need. Everybody should be going to the bathroom, ideally once a day. It depends again on your system, but examples of insoluble fiber would be, whole bran or whole grain products, nuts, carrots, grapes, berries. So we do need a good combination of these types of food in our diet, even if you are, training for, a bodybuilding event. A performance plate for the rest of us, that aren't training for a bodybuilding style session, a good performance plate. I like 50% carbs and then mix 25% good fats. So, good cold pressed extra virgin olive oil or avocados, or even some different nuts, provide us with good fats, and using some oils, and then good clean proteins. So you can, you like chicken, but I like mixing food. I don't like eating the same. I don't usually recommend eating the same food every day. I like to mix it up. I think it causes a little bit of metabolic confusion. So it can actually help your metabolism work a little bit better and provide different types of nutrients into the body, which I think then makes food and eating a little bit more fun, because you're not eating the same stuff all the time. You're mixing it up. Your body will thank you for it, especially if it's, cleaner foods. But I do want to comment that that eating should be something that you enjoy. And, I have this 80-20 rule, could even be 90-10 rule, depending on, what your status is. But, if 80% of the time you can really clean up your diet, I think you're going to really, really feel just a ton better. But 20% of the time, and we were all going to still go out every once in a while and socialize and have our fun days or birthday parties or whatever it is. I don't say go crazy and eat horrible, but you can lighten up a little, and and on those days enjoy the moment, enjoy what you're doing, and then get right back onto your your healthier program.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually what I've done now. The later years, I've learned how to mix it up a little bit, and my body composition is already kind of a machine doing this so long, so I already know myself and the foods. But yeah, no, I eat steak and I'll eat some dessert every now and then, drink a little alcohol at social events. I'm learning how to do all that and be a more balanced person socially. So as we wrap this up, where can people find you? Do you have a website or any type of social media platforms that people can reach out to you if they have questions? And I'll
Sure.
do the same.
Sure. Yeah. I do have my website is Gut Recharge, so gutrecharge.com. And I do have a Facebook page. I actually am starting a Facebook group. It's on, in Facebook, and actually, Instagram, the same, Gut Recharge. But the Facebook group is it's about dump your digestive baggage. So let's get rid of, all these problems, and trying to establish a group where, we have community support, where we can all help each other, and we can get on there and help answer some questions that you might have specifically, and then give you some information. I have a lot of information on my website, which is, it's constantly growing. So we're trying to fix it up so that it has more information.
Yeah, great. And then, yeah, so, our practice here in Miami is still mostly a venous disease practice, my vascular surgery practice. As I said, I own a gym called Ripped Gym, RYPT, in Midtown. And what we've done lately now, we formed a new entity called Midtown Body to help link the two practices. So to merge the gym with the medical side, we're doing more wellness now, focusing on nutrition, and we can do some hormone replacement. We can get blood work. We can get people a DEXA scans so they see their visceral fat and their body composition. and just adding this whole wellness piece to the practice. Miami Skin Spa is another one that we have here for folks who want to cheat a little bit and use devices to help tune up and do some body contouring. Also some medical weight management. There's some new medications available for those that are really struggling with obesity to, again, help them kickstart some weight loss. But ultimately, we want to get people, off all the pills and be able to just manage on their own through healthy eating and exercise. So want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. This has been recorded, and this will now go on to a channel as a podcast for on-demand views and comments. So hopefully folks will subscribe to that, and we're going to keep this going and bring all kinds of topics and speakers in the future as we get into the value of a balanced life, and that means proper exercise and proper nutrition. All right, any closing comments, Mary Lou, and we'll sign off.
Yeah, and actually proper mindset and lifestyle. So trying to find ways to reduce stress, and so yeah, it's a complete piece. It's not, it is food, it's exercise, but it's stress reduction, and maybe some meditation, or and figure out some yoga, do some different things that really honor your entire system, so that the body learns how to get stronger, absorb nutrients properly. And then, if you can reduce your stress, you'll have a lot more fun. You'll feel a lot more balanced, and I think it'll be enjoyable.
Attitude and positive thinking.
That's
All
right.
Thank you, everyone.